What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It's time for another edition of the Agents of Fandom podcast. And while we are sad that Ahsoka has come to a conclusion, we have Loki starting up in just a couple days. So I guess tomorrow now at the time that we are recording. So very exciting time for content as soon as that ends, the day that Loki ends. The Marvels is in theaters, so we are jam-packed with amazing content right now. My name is TJ Zwarich, joined as always by my good buddy Adam Blevins. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, man. Like I told you guys before we started recording, I just walked in from work about 10 minutes ago, so I'm still like processing the day that I had and then also getting ready to talk about this show. But I'm excited. Like overall, I'm ready to decompress and separate this day into two with like the bad, the nasty work behind me, and now I can actually do something fun and talk about this show with you guys. So I'm excited.
Speaking of still processing, our wonderful guest just finished watching the episode about a half hour ago, maybe an hour ago. Laila, you were here with us for the Ahsoka primer, and now the series has come to a close. How you doing this evening?
I'm good. I feel like I just lived 10 different lives watching this finale and the season as a whole. I don't even know where to start with my thoughts, so I'm really excited to get into it. And yeah, thank you for having me back.
Very excited to chat. So while no live show this week, but make sure you're following the Agents Fandom wherever you get your podcast. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the little notification bell, and let's dive right into it because we don't want to make this episode. It's going to be tough. Anytime we talk about Ahsoka, we end up just going for like at least an hour. But I'm going to try and keep it tight because we have so much content dropping this week. My Fan Expo interviews have started to drop. Our Zeb Wells interview, he talks about the death of Ms. Marvel and Amazing Spider-Man 26 for the very first time since the controversial issue. That's up on YouTube and the podcast feed, as well as my interview with Nolan North, and they're just going to keep coming throughout the week. We got New York Comic Con this weekend. We got Loki. There's so much, so let's just get right into it. Laila, you just finished the episode. What did you think of the finale and the series as a whole?
Oh my god. I mean, we talked about this like months and months ago on Fandom Academy on our Hot Takes episode, and I was like, I'm not that hyped for Ahsoka. It's really not up there with my most anticipated projects. But oh my god, I don't know why I ever doubted Dave Filoni in my brain. Like, what was I thinking? This show, watching it week to week, was just incredible, and all of the surprises, all of the twists and turns it took, I was just like in awe of the whole thing, especially the finale. There was just some insane action. I mean, throughout the whole show, I was just on edge the whole time, which I love from a show. And, the cameos and the storylines all coming together, I was just, it was amazing. And I really cannot think of that many criticisms, which is high praise for me because I'm a very judgy person. But the finale was great. That last like 2 minutes had me in tears, just like, oh my god, this is really happening right now. Yeah, I'm at a loss for words. I loved it so much.
I think I can feel putting my personal feelings aside, I still think Andor is the highest quality Star Wars television show we've seen.
Correct.
But Ahsoka is definitely my favorite. I just enjoyed every single minute of this show. Adam, what did you think of the finale?
I really enjoyed it. It wasn't perfect for me, and a lot of that narrows down to the amount of questions that I still have. Questions that I'll say I'm certain are going to be answered, whether it's in Ahsoka season 2, The Mandalorian season 4, or whatever. I'm sure, at least I hope, all these questions that I have will get answered. But it's like I'm one of those people. This is a personal thing. Again, I'm one of those people that I'm not great at like putting a criticism aside because like, oh, this will be answered in a future project. Like that's not the kind of person that I am. Like overall, like I still really, really enjoyed this episode. And like, but we did get a few things, we talked about this last week, how much this episode had to accomplish. Like there was still so many little threads to tie out. And we're like, well, how are they going to do it? And it's like, well, I mean, we got faith in Dave Filoni. And like, I think this is still a really good episode, but like I kind of finished and I was like, wait, so what about blank and blank and blank and blank? I was like, what about all this stuff? Like there's still so many questions that I have. So overall, like I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the season as a whole. Like Layla said, I was kind of in the same boat. I wasn't ridiculously excited. Like I wouldn't even compare my excitement heading into this compared to like season 3 of The Mandalorian. And this like blew away my expectations, especially those middle episodes, like 4, 5, and 6, were just some of like my favorite Star Wars ever. But as for this episode, while I did really enjoy it, I do have not even really qualms or criticisms, just a lot of questions. I'm sure I'm sure we'll get into later. I apologize for my dog right there, but you guys go ahead, take it away.
Never have to apologize for the dog stuff. We know this is a animal friendly podcast. Layla, if you want to bring your new child Pedro on for a quick appearance, feel free. But I had only one qualm, and we'll get into it. So spoilers for this episode. I right after watching, I had a little bit of like a what the hell? That's not the ending I wanted. But after sitting with it overnight and really thinking about Ahsoka's journey throughout the episode, I feel so much of that was just tied up perfectly the more I thought about this. So I'm excited to dive into it. Spoilers for episode 8, the finale of Ahsoka. Let's start getting into it because the scene, like right on the intro, the Kevin Kiner score straight off the hop with like Thrawn being introduced and like it was just perfect. I was shivering throughout. I was terrified throughout. That was one of the things we talked about last week of we had no idea how this was going to end. And throughout this episode, I had no idea how it was going to end. I didn't know what was going to happen next throughout the entire thing. And it begins with Thrawn kind of giving almost like a bit of a Rebels recap speech of like, I'm done underestimating Jedi. I've done it before. And I got fucked. Everybody that was below me, they did it. They got fucked. That's not happening again. And it was almost worked as a little recap. And then something I didn't see, and I honestly didn't expect really, was how prominent Morgan Elsbeth's role was going to be throughout this series. And she ascends from Night Sister to Great Mother. And she gains the Blade of Talzin, which we haven't seen since the Clone Wars, when Mother Talzin, the first Great Mother we get introduced to, uses it to fight Mace Windu. And now it's back, and that was cool. Layla, what did you think about this ascendance?
Oh, it was great. The 3 great mothers, whatever, they creep me the fuck out the whole show. Like I made my mum watch Ahsoka with me every week, and she was just like, I can't look at them. They're so terrifying. And seeing Morgan kind of ascend into that, I was like, fuck, like something shit's about to go down. Like, I mean, it ended pretty quickly because rip, but it was really cool to see and her kind of like getting everything she was working towards, I guess. And yeah, it was really great. And seeing the blade in action was so cool, like against Ahsoka's lightsaber. It's like that duel between her and Ahsoka was one of my favorite parts of the episode. It was just incredible.
I don't know what it is, but I just love swords. I think they're so cool.
Yes.
And that sword was fucking cool. Like the Blade of Talzin was badass. Adam, you're muting when because Lacey's barking. I'm muting because Shadow is meowing all over the place. What did you like? To me, this was totally unexpected. What did you think of Morgan Elsbeth's ascendance to becoming a great mother?
Well, it was really cool. It was one of those things I kind of didn't see it coming for whatever reason. Like if you had asked me last episode what I thought was in store for Morgan Elsbeth, I wouldn't have said, "Oh, she's going to ascend into the same level as it." Like I don't know why I wasn't thinking that, but I wasn't, and I think that's pretty good storytelling because it's not something that was obvious. But I like that choice, and I mean, like you guys said perfectly. I mean, the sword was really cool. I was a little confused, when they pulled it. Like I'm always willing to suspend a lot of belief with this kind of stuff, but then when they started doing the blue lightning, and then I was like, wait, what are they doing here? And then I saw a sword. I was like, oh, wait, what? I was like, oh, you know what? Fuck it. I'm in. If they're going to fight with a sword, and I don't know what it is. We got to see it with the, when Morgan Elsbeth fought with the Beskar spear in the Mandalorian season 2, that sound, and we see it throughout the Mandalorian too, but like that sound of like a lightsaber hitting any kind of metal, and like in contrast to like lightsaber on lightsaber fights, is always just really cool. But like, I mean, yeah, I was kind of shocked. Like Morgan Elsbeth was definitely like the most prominent like non-Rebels character figure, probably like non-Ahsoka, Ezra, Sabine figure in this entire episode, even more so than Thrawn. And I think that's because Thrawn is obviously going to be more of a player down the line, and this is the end of the line for Morgan Elsbeth. But no, I mean, I have one of my many questions. I mean, is I guess we'll tie it back a little bit to the Night Mothers. Is I'm like, wait, or the Night Sisters. I was just like a little bit confused, and maybe we're going to get into this later. I might be jumping the gun, so apologies. But it's like I'm still just really confused as to why like that relationship, the Thrawn Night Sisters relationship, and like how that developed. And I know Ezra says a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, about like, well, like Thrawn in a moment that another thing I'm sure we'll talk about later, but I kind of rolled my eyes at when he was like, yeah, like we got here, Thrawn woke up the mothers and he built a ship. And I was like, okay, well, that was like a really reductive way of explaining everything that happened to you guys over like the last several years. Like I would have liked to have seen some of that, but it's like overall, like with Morgan Elsbeth specifically, I know I am getting ahead of myself, but it's like I really did enjoy everything that was going on with her, even though I have some complaints or really just some questions about like the whole Night Sister Thrawn dynamic.
That, and yeah, we will get into it, but that definitely seems like one of those things that, because of how they dropped it at the end of the episode, that's going to be heavily explored throughout the future. I really liked how this episode laid out Thrawn's tactics so well. We kind of have been talking about throughout the series. He will lose a battle. He doesn't care. It's about winning the war. And he knew the ultimate goal was getting home, and he just consistently laid out all these plans to slow them down, knowing damn well he was losing every one of those battles, but the purpose was slowing them down enough for him to win the war. But kind of dialing it back, going back to the start of the episode, the intro was so cool. Like we mentioned, all that stuff with the score highlighting it was incredible. But then the next set of scenes might have been even cooler, because we get Ezra with Huyang building a lightsaber, and it all culminates with him using Kanan's second backup emitter. And we learn about Huyang's relationship with Kanan. He calls him young Caleb. It's so beautiful. Adam, what did you think of like any Kanan Jarrus mention we just kind of melt at? And so what did you think of this scene?
That's exactly what it was. Like I just felt like even though he wasn't there, I felt like I was just getting this warm hug from Kanan. It's just this like safety blanket. I'm like, oh, I love this character so much, and I'm glad that they didn't. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I would have loved to have seen him as like a Force ghost or something like that, but I'm glad we didn't get any kind of crazy resurrection or whatever. Like, I think the way to use him in this series, like how they did, is the perfect way to handle it. Because now, like Ezra is obviously, like we've talked about, going to be training his son, likely the case going forward. But then now Ezra is also carrying a part of him. Excuse me, carrying a part of him with that lightsaber. And it's like, as soon as you see it, you're like, it just makes you like get giddy and smile. Cause like, oh, I've seen that lightsaber a minute before so many times. Like, then he ignites it and it's blue too. That's just like the entire thing I was like, that's like Kanan's lightsaber. He is literally using Kanan's lightsaber, even though we know it's not his. Like, it was incredible. I really had absolutely no notes on that. The way they handled that was perfect.
I think that might have been my favorite scene of the episode. And actually, I just thought of an idea that is terrifying, and we'll talk more about the concept of this later. But can you imagine one day, if maybe it's, what if we see some type of flashback or Force Ghost moment of Kanan Jarrus with Freddie Prinze Jr. in live action, and then in a movie fight or something with the Great Mother, they go to Dathomir, and the Great Mother is just like utilize some zombie Kanan Jarrus to fight Ezra or something in live action with Freddie Prinze Jr. Oh wow, would that be a wild moment? Layla, what did you think of the scene? Did it function as a warm hug for you like it did for us?
It functioned as emotional damage. Kanan's death is one of the things that fucks me up the most out of Star Wars history ever. Like, I have like a top 3 things that just, if I think about it too long, I will start crying on the spot, and Kanan is one of those things. Any mention of him in this show, I was like, because my mum hasn't seen Rebels, I was like, Kanan, and she was like, who the fuck is Kanan? Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, don't even talk to me right now. Like, it made my heart equally sad and happy at the same time, just seeing him like still be brought up in these shows and seeing the connections he still has with people. It's just, oh, I loved it.
Ava and I had been doing like our second watch of Rebels in like the last 6 months, and we've made it all the way to Jedi Knight episode in season 4, and we just stopped watching. We just didn't continue, and we pivoted
That's
to
where
Young
it ends.
Justice.
That's
Yeah, we
where it ends.
pivoted to Young Justice, and I don't know if we're actually going to be like making it back there on this rewatch. Because like it's painful. It's really, really hard to watch, but it's so special when he gets brought back up. That scene also really, which we see throughout this episode, but that scene really hammered home how perfect Amon Esfandi is as Ezra Bridger. Just like I have a system too, and him like going back and forth with Hu Yang. It's so great, but it also gives us a really pivotal moment between Sabine and Ahsoka, because we see in Sabine's face that she is longing for the relationship Kanan and Ezra had with Ahsoka. She is longing for someone to just be standing in her corner, ready to back her up always. And you can tell that wasn't the case with Ahsoka. We learned for the first time when Hu Yang says to Ezra, we finally know what went wrong. It's been alluded to throughout the series, and we finally get our first answer, and it's after the Purge of Mandalore, after everybody was blown up, which we've heard about throughout the first 3 seasons of The Mandalorian. Sabine loses her entire family, and Ahsoka was terrified of losing her to the dark side. Why was she terrified of losing her to the dark side? Because she already lost her master to the dark side. It also adds so much more context to her conversation with Din Djarin throughout The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, because that attachment she's seen and she's worried about, she's not just talking about Anakin, she's talking about Sabine. And that fear is what drove a wedge between the two of them. But my favorite culmination of events throughout the series is Ahsoka turning back into the Ahsoka we know and love. Rosario Dawson's portrayal actually is back to looking like Ahsoka, as opposed to just this stoic being that we don't know what's going on inside of her head. She's trusting in the force, and what she had been doing before was she was leading with fear. She was letting fear cloud her judgment with Sabine. And that quick conversation between Ezra and Hu Yang, and just getting to see Sabine's face. Adam, I thought that kind of told that whole story with minimal words.
Yeah, it did. I will say I really enjoyed that particular scene, but I talked about this last week. I think this is one of those moments that would have benefited from some kind of flashback. Like, I really would have liked to have seen some of the things that happened with these two their first time around. And it's like, I'm a show not tell kind of guy. And I know that the last like half of the season, they do a lot of talking about what happened with like their relationship, what caused it to go bad. Like you said, that adds all that additional context that we need. But like, I just think it would have really amplified this moment to have like gotten to see some of that tension. Like even if we get to see some of the good moments and then see how it kind of crumbles and see that relationship, instead of just being like up to interpret it ourselves, like based on the little bits of information that we've gotten from them, I think that would have helped. Now, this isn't like, I still really enjoyed this particular scene. And I think their relationship throughout the course of this show and this particular arc, Sabine and Ahsoka's, has developed wonderfully. Like you said, you nailed it when you said that like the Ahsoka that we saw in the very beginning is not the Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, but this Ahsoka is. It feels like her again, which I was really missing in those first few episodes. And I'm so glad. Like now I feel like it was probably a conscious effort on Rosario Dawson that I was like, I may have, like perhaps I've judged you too harshly when I was saying you didn't have it in you in the beginning, because now I think she's doing an awesome job. But it's like, I think the show would have benefited from some kind of like additional flashback, but overall I'm still really happy with what we got.
I honestly, I wouldn't put this out of the question, but I think we would be very well served with a full animated season of Sabine and Ahsoka's first time together that also shows Ezra and Thrawn and their time. Like, I totally understand, like,
Yes,
if
please.
it's a lot of story that with not a lot happening, maybe, that you don't want to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars telling that story, fine. But I think an animated series filling that all in would be super, super cool.
Hmm.
Layla, what did you think about Ahsoka's journey throughout the series as a leader and her finally kind of cluing in at the end?
Well, I just want to echo kind of what you guys said. I think my doubts for the show stemmed from Rosario's initial portrayal of Ahsoka, like in The Mandalorian. I was like, this Ahsoka is so different. I don't know if I can get used to this new version of the character. So, kind of like, and in the first few episodes, I was still unsure about it. But as we got close to the end of the series, and she kind of, she really grew on me, and the way that her character was adapting, I'm really happy that she eventually, like, I understood her character more, I felt like. But yeah, her evolution as a character in the show is just great to watch, and kind of seeing the relationship between her and Sabine grow stronger, just, and then making Sabine stronger in the process, and probably making Ahsoka stronger in the process too, was just so great to see. And these are just two great characters, and I just like, even if it was an animated series or they just go into way more detail about it in, if there's a season two, I just need more of them together because they're just an amazing pair of people.
They really are. And one of the things later in the episode that we'll, of course, touch on is Sabine ultimately using the Force and tapping into it towards the end. And I've seen people very conflicted about this on the internet, from it stemming from, yes, she did it, this is the coolest thing ever, to boo, no, what the fuck, the whole point is she's not supposed to be Force sensitive.
I think we talked about this in the primer episode, and we were like, would you be happy or would you be like, what the fuck?
Exactly. And so there's a few things that, well, I still don't fully know how I feel about it, but I do
Yeah.
know I enjoyed the moment, and I think it was set up properly, is what I'll say. Because through dating it back to Rebels, but even from the start of this episode, like start of this series, what we've seen that Sabine just has always needed is people in her fucking corner. Somebody backing her up, because she didn't have it with her family. She didn't have it at the Imperial Academy. She didn't have it when she tried to go back to her family. The one place she had it was the Ghost Crew. And then all of a sudden that was gone. And Ahsoka not fully supporting her and saying, I'm worried about you and I don't think you can do it, that just goes back and it triggers all the same trauma she has had throughout her life. And now that we see, as soon as Ahsoka tells her, no matter what happens next, I'm going to be there for you. Because who did that for Ahsoka? Anakin. Always. Ahsoka was betrayed by the Jedi Order. She was framed. People totally gave up on her. And the one person who never did was her master, Anakin Skywalker. And she clues in that she can't live in fear because she's scared of losing Sabine to the dark side like she lost Anakin to the dark side. She needs to trust in the Force and be there for her like Anakin was for her, because as flawed Anakin was as a person, he was a pretty great master to Ahsoka. And as soon as Ahsoka puts that belief in Sabine, we immediately see her start leveling up. We immediately see her start fighting like the Sabine from Rebels with all of the training from her lightsaber. She's I found a lot of this episode was spent on like race against the clock style fights of like, hurry up, we got to go through this. And I was like, but there's so much to happen. How are we all spent on like this fight where they're just getting bombed from a starship? But it did give us a lot of really cool moments between Ezra and Ahsoka and Sabine, growth for Ahsoka throughout. And Adam, you mentioned like it was cool to see that he was using Kanan's blue lightsaber through Kanan's emitter. It also brought some pretty cool visuals through those fight sequences of like the white, the green, the blue, all at once fighting in tandem.
Yeah, I mean the action was great. I do want to bounce back a little bit to the Sabine Force thing. And Layla, I'm glad you brought up that episode that you were on in one of the primers, because I believe it was that episode, but it may have been one of the first episodes we were covering this when I mentioned that I personally would have loved to have seen Sabine connect with the Force in like a little bit of a different way. Just because it's like, I feel like we've seen this particular thing so many times, but like this, you need this, like, oh, it's time to grab the saber because you need it or you're going to die. Like that moment was really, really cool. Like, I'm not saying that it wasn't cool, but I don't know. Overall, it was one I just would have liked to have seen it been written a little bit of a different way. Like maybe like she needs to, like the only way for her to do this is she needs to tap into it, something like a force echo or something else. Just because I was like, when I'm watching it, like I'm like, oh, okay, like I see what's happening here. I see what's getting ready to come. So like while it was still like a really, really cool moment, like I definitely wasn't like I didn't jump up out of my chair and scream like I did at something else that happens later that I'm sure we're going to talk about. But I don't know, just to circle it back to, I will say that the entire fight sequence, just seeing them all three fight together, that was like as good as the choreography gets. Like, and then going from all three of them to then kind of separating with Ahsoka fighting Morgan Elsbeth and like all that, they handled that really, really well. I've been a huge fan of the fight choreography throughout this entire show, and I know a lot of people haven't, but like overall, I've enjoyed watching these lightsaber duels and blaster fights as much as I have any of the other ones in Star Wars.
I also just loved the scene of, and I'm kind of jumping back and forth, so Layla, feel free to kind of comment on any of these things, really. But I just really love the scene of, like, when Ezra gets grabbed by the Night Trooper, and then we get, like, a classic Sabine, like, trying to shoot, and he doesn't fully know if he has the confidence, and then she just stabs the lightsaber through it. It was incredible. What did you think of all the action? What did you think of Sabine's development into badass, and how do you feel of her being a Force user?
I mean, she was always a badass. There was no argument about that. But I can't even remember in the primary if I was like, yeah, I want her to use the Force, or I don't know how to feel about that. But I thought it was a cool moment. I agree with Adam. I think we've kind of seen the similar like do it or die moments a few times, but it didn't stop it from being a really cool moment in the show. I just love Sabine. I knew she was going to be one of my favorite parts of this entire series, and just seeing her develop the way she did was amazing. And the duels and the blaster fights, I loved every single one of them. There was not one of them where I'm like, okay, this is getting a bit repetitive now. Like, you've all shot each other a few times. Like, let's move on. Like, I loved each and every one of them. And I think the main reason was because of the score that they were accompanied by. Like, you probably talk about this every week, and I will preach it in anything. The score was incredible. It just had me on edge the whole time. Like the eerie, like the violins or whatever the fuck was going on, I was just like, oh, this is just amazing. And yeah, I loved every minute of every action scene that they gave us.
The part I loved about it so much was my biggest qualm about Attack of the Clones, and that's a movie that has some pretty terrible dialogue, but the thing I like the least is I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. And throughout that movie, he's talking to Anakin, and he's like, my young Padawan learner, sorry, Layla, for the terrible accent impression, but like, my young Padawan learner, my young apprentice, if you actually did this, maybe you'd rival Master Yoda, blah, 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 blah. Always putting him down, always trying to put him in his place as a Padawan, you know, not acknowledging that, like, I can't teach you the same way as everybody else is taught because you're the fucking best there ever was. It's like an aspect of teaching. Like, you can't teach every single student the same. You have to meet them where they're at. You have to accommodate their needs. You have to build them up based on what they're good at so they can get some confidence to improve on what they're not so great at. And Anakin, that wasn't done well with him. Nobody did that for him like Qui-Gon probably would have had he stayed alive. And then when we see the Clone Wars, we get to see this long, stemmed out relationship between him and Ahsoka, where he does so many things wrong, but he always gets that right. He always just backs Ahsoka, and he's always just, I'm here for you. No matter what happens, I'm here for you. Because nobody was doing that for him. No, other than Palpatine who was lying about it. Nobody was saying, like, dude, you're great, and I see you, and I'm here for you. And that's what falls, like, that's what drops him to the dark side. And he did that for Ahsoka. And so for Ahsoka to finally clue in that, like, that's what turned Anakin to the dark side. Not anything else, but other than not having people in his corner backing him. I don't want to make that same mistake again. I can't let my grief hold me back. I need to be here for Sabine. And all of a sudden, they're working together in unison. So cool. Ezra doing a force pull, and then Sabine slicing the night troopers in half from her force pull. Chef's kiss. Incredible, incredible stuff. And then we've alluded to it throughout. We didn't know if we were going to see it for sure, but fucking zombies. Star Wars, Night Sister, Dark Magic, zombies. That was so cool. And something I realized throughout, I was saying this as they were fighting them, like, the rules of zombies are different wherever you look. Whether it's the movie with Woody Harrelson, Zombieland with Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg, whether it's The Last of Us, The Walking Dead, whatever it is, they all have different rules. But if all else fails, if you ever encounter zombies and you don't know the rules, chop off their fucking head. That's what you do. Stab them in the head, chop off their head. That's first step, always. And it was nice to see them finally get into that. But Adam, what did you think of the introduction to the lore of zombies in live action Star Wars?
Well, I was kind of wondering earlier in the episode before we get that official reveal when Thrawn was talking to what's his second in command's name? Enoch? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When he's given Enoch a command, he like nods and walks away in the most lifeless way. I'm watching that like, wait a minute. That dude is either not all there or like he's got something seriously wrong with him, because the way he's responding to those commands, like, yes, Grand Admiral. And then he just stumbles off like he's about to, he's just sleepwalking. I was like, okay, something crazy has got to be happening with these. And I'm glad. Oh, that's one of those things that I want to know. That little reveal opened up so many doors that I want to know more about. But I am really glad that we got to, like, that was confirmed. We know they're undead. And I assume that they're all like that there's no, like, none of them are alive. They're all raised by Night Sister magic or however. But, like, it's always really cool when a universe like this, already this expansive, adds this new element to it. I mean, I have no complaints here, because that was just really, really cool. This is just another one of those things where it's like I saw that and I'm like, wait, no, like, and then the episode ended and I'm like, no, I have to know. Are there more? Is that what's in all those crates? Or is it more zombies? Is it magic to raise more zombies? Is it seeds to plant more zombies when you go home? What are in those crates? I was just like, I have to know everything that's going on now. And then they just like they pulled it away from me. But overall, like, seeing that was really, really cool. When they started doing, like, I wasn't even sure what was happening when she was like, it's time, and they started doing the chant and the stuff started going down. But then they started waiting. That scene was really well directed when they're like walking up, and then you can see like the hand kind of twitch a little bit. And then they all start waking up, and then they turn around. I was like, oh shit, because how are they going to kill him now? And like you said, you answered it. It's just like it's got to be through the head, no matter what kind of zombie it is. But I don't know. This whole thing, it was really, really cool to finally get to see zombies. But like, I need to know more now, whether it's like Star Wars What If with zombies or whatever it is going to be. Like, I have to know more about Star Wars zombies.
Layla, you love Pedro Pascal, and then he pops into a Star Wars show. And then from that Star Wars show, he becomes the lead in your favorite video game about zombies. Now, the zombies are coming back to Star Wars. Yeah, as our resident aficionado in all things exactly this, what did you think about the Night Troopers being zombie reveal?
I've seen enough zombies this year for my liking. Like, please just give me a break. No, I'm kidding. They looked insane. I was really excited when they all just started, like, twitching. It is the twitching that gets me. I'm not a horror fan, but I'm a zombie fan. Never let that be mistaken. When they started twitching, I was like, fuck, something is going down. Something is about to happen. That's why when Morgan got, like, sliced or whatever the fuck happened to her, I was like, oh, she's just gonna be like brought back to life by this green dust, and she's gonna come back up and be like, surprise, I'm not dead. But that didn't happen. Oops, rip. But yeah, they looked insane. Like you said, number one rule of zombies: chop their fucking head off. Don't even mess about. Don't run away from them. Don't be doing any of this shit. Don't throw bricks at them if your name is Joel Miller, please, for the love of God. But yeah, they looked insane. Anything zombies, give it to me.
Also, you have the high ground These guys
Yeah.
are slowly walking up the stairs. Fucking force push them down the stairs. I'm
Literally.
watching that and being like, my God, just give them one of these. They will all tumble down and you get 15 more minutes of time. But Adam, like you said, it opens up so many potential questions and new lore possibilities. Hit us up on socials at Agents Fandom on Twitter and TikTok, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. Drop us when you're dropping a like on YouTube. Hit us up in the comments too, and give us your theories, your ideas, because there are so many different possibilities. The magic we saw used to revive them was very similar to the dust we see dissipate out of Merrick in a few episodes ago, which now drives me to the question: was Merrick literally just an Inquisitor that they revived with Night Sister magic? Was that just an Inquisitor zombie? Because that's pretty cool that they can do that. And if they can do that, does that have anything to do with Palpatine surviving all these years? Was it more than cloning technology? Was it Night Sister's magic on top of his own abilities with the Force on top of cloning technology? There's been a whole lot with Moff Gideon's clones and now the Night Sister magic reviving people from the dead into zombies. And the zombies looked really cool in the moment right before Sabine did her Force thing and sliced her head off. Like, that was pretty terrifying. But so many different possibilities of the weird writing choice to have somehow Palpatine returned. Dave Filoni is now doing what he does best and going, "Ooh, that was weird. All right, let's see what I can do with that," and filling in the gaps in between and making it work. It was great. It was great stuff. Thrawn, like we talked about at the beginning, won. He lost all of the battles so he could win the war. He gets home. They return to Dathomir. We were all wondering why the Great Mothers were serving Thrawn, and they say, "We are here to serve you." We had no idea why, and it's because not only did he revive them, not only did he help awaken them, but he's also bringing them home. He's bringing them back to Dathomir so they can do some serious damage on their home planet filled with dark magic. And he gives a really cool scene with like when he's talking to Ahsoka. He brings up her master. He shows respect like he always does, and then mocks her a little bit, saying, "I can't help but wonder if you might have the same. I knew you would fight like your master. I can't help but think if you may have the same fate." And just really rubs that in about the Darth Vader thing a little bit. But the coolest part about all of it at the beginning, now my qualm of the episode is the reunion of Ezra and Hera is underwhelming, and I needed that scene to be way longer.
Yeah.
But the lead up was so perfect. Amon Esfandi as Ezra Bridger is so perfect. We get the classic Rebels tropes of him going, "Yep, 10-4, good buddy." He's hopping on the intercom and
Ezra
pretending
Bridger,
to be a
identity
stormtrooper.
fraud.
Exactly. And then what does he do? He puts on the stormtrooper outfit. He spends like 17% of Rebels in a stormtrooper outfit because of how much he's messing around in disguises. I thought it was so perfect. Adam, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. That was like textbook. From the moment Amon Esfandi came on screen, I think he has been the superstar in terms of like embodying his animated character. I mean, like everybody else has done a good job by and large, I think, but like he has been 10 out of 10 without fail. There's just been so many times where I just like find myself like watching him and I just find myself smiling really big because I'm like, that's exactly what Ezra would say. That's exactly how he would say it. That's exactly what he would be doing right now. Like there was not a single time. Every other character had at least one time. Now, granted, there was like the other characters were on screen a lot more. Every other character had at least one time where I'm like, wait, is that something they would do, or is that something that? But like, not a single time with Amon Esfandi because he was absolutely incredible. But I do agree with you that reunion was a little bit underwhelming and lacking a very big purple Lasat because like where the fuck has Zeb been at this entire series and why was he not there in the end? The answer to that question is probably the VFX budget. But you're Lucasfilm. You're a $300 billion company. That shouldn't be a problem. There's no reason for Zeb to not be here after appearing in The Mandalorian. This reunion, especially, like I was like, when I realized what was happening, I was like, okay, like they were saving it for the end. He's gonna be there. He's gonna come out. Like the camera's gonna pan over to him. No, oh, there's no reason that he shouldn't have been there. Like that was like the most frustrating part. But for Amonis Fondi, I mean, like nobody could have done a better job with this character. Just 100 out of 10. He's been awesome.
That was my biggest qualm of the episode, was that reunion, because it begins with, and like you said, Zeb should have been there. That was the perfect opportunity for Zeb to be there. And it begins with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, just, you can see through the green makeup, her neck just quivering as she's trying as hard as she can to muster out Ezra. And then Amonis Fondi's delivery of Hi Hera. This seems like such a small thing, but his delivery of Hi Hera. Think of how often, it doesn't matter whether you're 18 or whether you're 30. Think of how often where you see, maybe it's a relative you haven't seen for some time. Maybe it's somebody who means something to you. Maybe it's somebody who you respect, and they're not just an adult; they're a real adult. They were an adult when you were a little kid. And so Hera, of course, was Ezra's essentially adoptive mother, and he delivers the most perfect Hi Hera in a high-pitched voice, exactly like he sounded from season 1. Just think of how often you see somebody like an adult from your youth, and your voice just like naturally goes higher because you're talking to an authority figure, or you know what I mean? You know that voice that I'm talking about? He executed it perfectly. And then Filoni, man, as much as I love you, I don't know if this is on Filoni. I don't know if this is on pardon me, I don't know how I'm forgetting the director of this episode's name. I interviewed him. He's incredible. Great guy and a great director. Rick Famuyiwa, thank you. I don't know if this was Rick. I don't know if this was Dave. But as I like to think this is Dave, because Dave, as like amazing he is as threading story connections and Easter eggs and understanding this force, I can just kind of see him being a little too robotic at times. Laila, I think he screwed the pooch on this one, because it started so perfect. And then it cuts. We need to see them hug. There's no Zeb. There's no hug. Give me tears. I had tears, and they didn't even give me time to let them flow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Until you said it, it hadn't clicked in my brain that Zeb didn't show up, and now I'm just even more angry than I was like an hour ago. Oh, that's actually ruined my fucking day. Anyways, yeah, it needed to be so much longer. They needed to at least hug. Like, it could have ended with the mid-hug and I would have felt better about it. But no, they had like 10 seconds of looking into each other's eyes, and then that was it. It was definitely Dave's fault. As much as an icon he is, he fucks me up sometimes. Like, I cannot deal with him sometimes. I'm just like, I want to punch him in the face and stomp on his cowboy hat. But, you know, he's great. But that was definitely his fault.
Dave Filoni is the cool dad that it's like, oh, dad wants to do all this fun stuff with me. You know, he plays video games with me. We talk about Star Wars and all of our interests. And then you try and bring somebody home, and like you have a crush, and you're trying to like, you accidentally let it slip to your parents. And then they're like, oh, who's this that entered the house? And just turns it so awkward and makes it so shitty. That's Dave Filoni. That's kind of, I feel that in my soul. We pivot back to the planet, though. We pivot back to Peridio, because Sabine and Ahsoka, they didn't make it. They're stuck. And that's how, Adam, we were talking about this last week. Like, how is this going to work that everybody gets back? Because I hope that's what happens for storytelling reasons, but I honestly don't know how. And now I apologize. I worded that as if I was going to ask you a question, but I'm going to monologue and then I'm going to ask you a question. Because I saw a lot of people, and I think the biggest flaw of this show is it was not necessarily overly accessible to non-Rebels fans and non-Clone Wars fans. And personally, I don't care. This was made for me, and it was perfect. Like, not me, but like, you know what I mean? Like, this was made for the people who have been clamoring for this, why would you care that much about Ahsoka anyways, aside about Anakin Skywalker, if you haven't seen the animated stuff? It was made for the people who have. And the animated stuff is some of the very best Star Wars, if not the very best Star Wars content you'll ever watch. And so I'm not even mad about it. It is what it is. I'm happy we got to see this. I'm going to just be grateful. But as someone who hasn't seen that stuff, I could absolutely see how it would be unsatisfying for Ahsoka and Sabine to be left in another galaxy, and then not only on top of that, have Ahsoka be like, it's all good, we're where we need to be, it's chill. But the more I sat on this episode, the more that ending actually felt pretty perfect. Because Ahsoka went to that galaxy knowing she may not even be going to the right place. She's just trusting in the Force, and she's going to be where she needs to be. And she says, Ezra's where he needs to be. We're where we need to be. They go to the little notey. They're all real cute. It's nice. But something that if you're glancing at your phone, because there's no dialogue really, and there is, Sabine talks about it a little bit. She says there's a shimmer of darkness in the horizon or whatever she says. But something so wildly important to the character of Ahsoka happens. And that's Ahsoka feels her master, Anakin Skywalker's presence in the Force for the very first time since before Order 66. And if you compare the frames of how she looked to this to the times that she used to do that, she used to meditate in the Clone Wars when she'd be on the opposite side of the galaxy of Anakin and have no idea what to do, but she'd meditate. She'd feel him and she'd know it would be okay. And then at the end of the Clone Wars after Order 66, she's terrified. She has no idea what happened. She tries to tap in. She tries to feel him, and she doesn't. She can't. He's gone. She breaks down. In the future.
I'm sorry to interrupt this moment. We've got a visitor.
Is that Pedro?
Say hi. He's biting me.
This, my friends, is why you need to watch on YouTube and make sure you're catching the video so you can see the little Mandalorian himself.
This is Pedro. He's not even 10 weeks old yet, and he's a little shit. You going back down?
The pictures you've been sending of him just with the holding a shoe or having his face in a cup have been pretty adorable.
Yeah. Okay,
and
back to Anakin.
Only in my most emotional part of the episode too. Classic dogs, right? They don't give a damn what you're talking about, whether it's barking, whether it's coming to visit. Classic dogs, and we love them for it. In Order 66 happens, she can't feel him. She breaks down. The next time she feels his presence, it's a darker presence, and it's Vader inside Rebels. And now she feels Anakin for the first time since before he died. And she's trusting in the Force. She sees his Force ghosts, but she truly believes she is where she needs to be. And there's one other important reason why I think that I'll touch on in a bit. But first off, Adam, I want to know what you think about that storytelling decision, which I didn't like at first, and then I really kind of grew on it. What do you think of that decision, and where did we go from here?
I really like it. I like when when a show gives me something like this that I really didn't see coming. I was expecting all of them to make it back because, man, it's going to be, and it is going to be a pain. However, Ezra is able to do it because he's the only one that's going to be able to get people back to that other galaxy to find them and bring them back. That they do have their work cut out for them because of this choice. But I really like it because I was it made it feel like when the stakes kind of come through, this whole series, if you're in another galaxy and there's this threat of oh man, what if we get left behind? In the back of my head, when I'm watching, I'm kind of are these stakes real? Are they actually going to get left behind? Come on. And then they do. And then you're like, holy shit, I actually should have been really worried about this when I probably wasn't because I just expected them all to somehow make it onto the ship. But I have no notes on that because that's the way you come through. If you want to tell a high stakes story like this, you have to come through on it, even if it's going to make things more difficult for you in the future, which this undoubtedly does. But I really, really I liked it as soon as I saw it because I was shocked. it took me a while to process. I'm still like processing how that's going to happen. And like I completely buy that Ahsoka's okay. Like, because seeing Anakin like that for her, I think they handled this entire thing perfectly. Like, seeing Anakin for her is that like safety blanket, like we were talking about hearing Kanan's name. Like, that's for her. As soon as she sees that, it's like, okay, like the Force got me here. The Force has gotten her through everything in her life, all the like trauma and horrible things she's dealt with. Why does she just suddenly, like, for the people, I'm just gonna say, for the people that say like, oh no, this is different, she should be like, that's not how Ahsoka works, and that's not how the Force works. Like, she is going to trust. Like, she has no reason to now be like, I know I've trusted in this my entire life, and it's gotten me through some horrible, horrible times, and literally everything I've ever dealt with. But this is different. Like, that's not how the Force works, and that's not how Jedi or like Force users, especially Force users as adept and attuned to their abilities as Ahsoka are, like, handle the Force and how they process it and use the Force to deal with these things. So like, I think everything that they did here makes perfect sense, and I really like this ending, because, and I think it sets up some really interesting potential. Damon and I were talking about this last night. One thing that I don't want to see is for season 2 to just be focused on Shin and her red armored people versus Ahsoka and Sabine and the turtle people. That scene, like, I hope we don't go straight to that, because after the stakes of this big story, like finding Thrawn and Ezra after all this time, that would seem like a pretty big step down. Like, so I hope that wherever
you can have one episode of that. You can get one where it's like a roadblock.
Right, that's exactly what I was about to say. Wherever we go next, I hope that we're out of this situation within an episode or two. Even if it's not, if they're not back in, they're all back in the same galaxy within another episode or two. I don't want that to be the focus of the story going next. But they took a swing. I always say I respect anybody willing to take a swing as big as this, and it's definitely a swing, because it would have been really, really easy for his big starship to just take off a few minutes later and everybody sneak out away on, and then they all sneak out away off the base, and then there's the big reunion. Like, that would have been really easy, and then it would have felt like, okay, well, what were we even doing in this other galaxy if everybody was just going to get out safe anyway? But they took a swing, and I love it.
Layla, what'd you think?
It never even really crossed my mind that they might even get left behind. Like, to me, it was just gonna have like the perfect ending, and they'd all escape, and they'd all go home, and they'd all be reunited, and there'll just be some teaser at the end trying to lead to something else. But they're actually stuck there. Like, they barely got there in the first place, and the only reason Sabine got there is because she was with people who knew how to get there. And there's no more whales to transport them back out of the planet anymore, and it's just so unexpected. And yeah, it didn't even cross my mind at all that might not be the ending. I guess I just thought it would have like this safety net of everyone going home, but here we are, they're just stranded.
Me too. It totally caught me off guard. Now, I do think that there's a chance that this could end up being a bit of a case of, oh, Mando and Grogu have been separated. They're going to be separated for an entire season. Oh, no, just kidding. They're immediately back together. And here is why I think that. Adam, you had a phenomenal tweet that I couldn't have worded better about Ray Stevenson's performance as Baylan Skoll. And with the story that they're setting up, it seems unfathomable that we're not going to get to see him continue this story. It's so incredibly sad. He was so incredible, and they set up something really cool with the character. He was standing upon a monument, a big-ass monument, a giant monument of the Ones, the Father of Mortis. And he not only was he on the Father of Mortis, but he was on his hand, and his hand was pointing somewhere, and we see it pointing towards a crazy flash of light. So one, who knows what the hell that is? There's a interesting article that I read on thedirect.com. I'm just pulling it up here now so I could make sure I can credit who wrote it. But it brings up something from Legends canon, and it talks about, by Nathan Johnson from the Direct, where it talks about how that big flash of light could be Abeloth, who is the mother, a big, evil, powerful being who could maybe end up being the big next gigantic big bad in Star Wars. I don't know if they're going to go that far, but what they're exploring with the Father with the son being there and then having the daughter, the statue of the daughter, totally headless, completely without a head, totally desecrated. I don't know how they're going to continue that arc, but it definitely opens up a lot of interesting Force possibilities. There's been rumors and theories that Anakin Skywalker is now taking on the role of the father. It's a very interesting Clone Wars arc. The part that really caught me, and the why I believe truly that Ahsoka believes she's exactly where she needs to be, is we see how that statue of the daughter is desecrated. It's gone, but we see our little friend Morai. Morai is a convor, which is basically an owl, and it's Ahsoka's little friend. Now, in that Mortis Clone Wars arc, spoilers for the Clone Wars, the brother, who is essentially like the father, is balance. It's dark, it's light, it's trying to maintain balance in the universe. The brother is the darkness, it's the dark side of the Force. The daughter is the light side of the Force. While they're there and the father is trying to convince Anakin Skywalker to become his successor, the son murders Ahsoka. He kills her. Ahsoka dies. That's why it wasn't the first time Ahsoka cheats death in this series. Ahsoka full on dies. And the daughter, one of the most powerful Force, not a Force user, not a Force sensitive being, a Force being, a being made up of the Force, sacrifices her own life for Ahsoka to continue living. Which is, again, fuels potential possibilities that the future of Ahsoka may be as the daughter to Anakin's father, as a Mortis god, the gods of the Force. But after the daughter's death, she becomes kind of a spiritual conduit through who? Morai, this little owl friend. And Morai, this little cute owl friend, is a powerful Force being who has been throughout Ahsoka's journey, who we now see again with her. And Morai was also in the World Between Worlds when Ezra saves Ahsoka's life again from certain death. Morai was there telling Ezra to pull Ahsoka out. And so I actually think this may not be a long-lasting conclusion. I think they may be led right towards the World Between Worlds, where they're just going to hop right back into their own galaxy, and it may be Morai who leads them there. It may involve Shin. It may involve Baylan. It may involve the daughter, the son, the father, who knows. But I think there's so much interesting lore to be explored there. I think when Dave Filoni cooks with the mystical aspect of Star Wars, the gods, the magic, the Night Sisters, it's some of the coolest Star Wars stuff. So I'm very excited to see where it goes from there. Hit us up on socials. Let us know what your theories are with it, because there's so many different ways that they could go from here. And I think that Morai appearance is very, very important, and it could signify that their return is a little bit sooner than we think it could be. Not next week, 2 days, not 2 days, 1 day. It's Wednesday as we record this, and tomorrow, Thursday, is the premiere of Loki. Adam, we got to see the first 4 episodes. They sent us 4. There's only 6. If my biggest issue with all Disney Plus content is give me more fucking episodes, because I loved every second of Ahsoka and I want more. I want more perspective. I want more context. Show me Ezra and Thrawn. Show me Ahsoka and Sabine. Give me 22 episodes of this shit, because it's amazing. And I do wish we could have that for Loki and these Marvel shows as well. But spoiler free, of course, we're allowed to give our reactions. The review embargo has lifted. What did you think of the first 4 episodes of Loki?
Oh, it's so hard to, I'm not going to spoil anything, but like, it's so hard to talk about this without spoiling anything, as you very well know. But like, they're back and they cooked again. They whipped up the magic again. Like, I don't know how, a lot of people were really, really concerned when Kate Herron left and they were bringing in somebody else, that this show was going to lose some of its magic. It didn't. For those of you anybody is listening to this that's concerned about that, Loki is still in really, really good hands, because they have absolutely cooked up something incredible that I was just about to, I feel like everything that I'm trying to be so careful with what I say is to not spoil anything. Like, honestly, you know what? I'm not going to say anything else on it. And if you want to read how incredible Loki is, go check out Martha's review on agentsofandom.com. But overall, it's phenomenal. TJ, what did you think of it? That's the real question.
Yeah, there's going to be content dropping each week, too. We won't only be talking it here, but I know they'll talking it on the Listen 3000. Layla, I'll throw it to you for a bit in terms of Fandom Academy stuff, but then also Millie's going to be writing week-to-week reviews up on agentsofandom.com as well. I thought it was really great. I thought it really benefited from being a second season. It's the first Disney Plus series that just, like, dives into the plot immediately. It picks up where it left off at the end of season 1. And Owen Wilson is incredible. Tom Hiddleston just keeps getting better and better in the role of Loki with each portrayal. Ke Kwan is the highlight. He's perfect. He's just absolutely perfect. And I truly wish I didn't watch the screeners because it just... we have to wait over a month for the last set of things that we saw, and it's just mind-blowing, and I just don't understand. I wish I need a resolution now. And so I don't know. It's like you said, it's kind of tough to talk about, but it's definitely going to be interesting whether you like the series or not, whether it's among your top options. Layla, I know you weren't a huge fan of the first season, but like it's meaningful is all I will say. It's very meaningful to the total MCU. Layla, you've been so wildly busy lately. You started up a brand new job. You're traveling across the country. How have you been? Where can people find you on socials? And what could they expect from Fandom Academy Podcast in the future?
Yeah. I've been
You got a
doing
new
lot
puppy, so
recently.
you're a new mother?
I am a new mother. October is the busiest month ever. I've just been to London for the first time. I'm going to Liverpool in a couple weeks to go to Liverpool Comic Con, where I'll be meeting Bella Ramsey and Gabriel Luna, which I'm so fucking excited about. And then at the end of October, I'm going to MCM in London, another Comic Con. It's all action happening right now. You can find me anywhere at Falcons Nat on all socials. You can find Fandom Academy on all podcast platforms. We've been on a bit of a hiatus at the minute because life is lifing, as it does when you're a young adult and everything is just flying at you at full speed. But we will be back soon, bigger and better than ever. One thing I did want to say, Hayden Christensen, I love that man with every inch of my life. When I went to Star Wars Celebration, I bring this up all the time, but when I went to Star Wars Celebration in April and I saw him on the live stage, I was with Rachel Leishman at the time, and we were both just in tears with the rest of the room, just watching the reaction to him, obviously after being in Obi-Wan Kenobi and him returning to Star Wars after so long. Just the reaction he got from fans. He was crying on the stage. I think the person presenting was crying. The whole audience was crying because there is just so much love for him and his character emerging. I mean, it was already there, but it's just rekindling. And I'm not a kid anymore, but there will be kids coming, and maybe Ahsoka will be one of the first Star Wars things they ever watch, or maybe Obi-Wan Kenobi will, and they'll get introduced to this amazing character, and then they'll get to see his legacy as Anakin for the first time, like we all did, and it's just so amazing. And Hayden is incredible, and Anakin is just one of my favorite characters ever. And seeing him in Ahsoka has wrecked me. Like, I might cry if I keep talking about it any longer, but yeah, I just had to say that, and it was so great to see him back.
There's something so special about about the first part, but it obviously sucks how those movies, not that they just weren't well received, because that is what it is. Some people are going to like stuff, some people aren't, but the way a lot of those actors got so much aggressive pushback of, you ruined my favorite franchise for me, this is garbage. But now for this to come full circle with all of us who were children when we watched the prequels for the first time, growing up to be adults, and Hayden getting to be just embraced by all of these people who loved him from the get-go, now that we're finally old enough to talk about it and to let him know and to give him these experiences. And so I'm so thankful as a fan that he wants to come back, and like I couldn't agree with you more. The fact that he's getting this reception is just incredible. And like you said, October is a busy, busy month. Not only do we have Loki starting tomorrow on Thursday, October 5th, but we got a very important interview tomorrow, Thursday, October 5th. Adam, we are talking with Joanna Robinson, Dave Gonzalez, the authors of The Reign of the
Gavin
MCU.
Edwards.
And Gavin Edwards, thank you. I was looking up the other one on my phone as we speak. The authors of The Reign of MCU, full deep dive into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Joanna Robinson, of course, is a host of the Ringerverse podcast, one of our favorite podcasts, one that got us into this industry of wanting to do this stuff. So that's going to be super exciting. And then, of course, next week, New York Comic Con. It doesn't stop. It's just constantly coming. So make sure you stay tuned to the Agents of Fandom socials. Make sure you stay tuned to and check out agentsoffandom.com. And like I said, not only hit that like button on YouTube, but hit the notification bell as well, because we got so many different podcasts, so many different great articles, just bringing you amazing, amazing content all the time. Laila, thank you so much for joining us today. Adam, you are wonderful as always. Ruben, behind the scenes, crushing it as per usual. We will see you probably in 2 days. Will be the next episode back on your podcast feed, breaking down episode 1 of Loki. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.